Hi everyone, and welcome to Geotab online training. I'm Carrie, and I have with me Angie Milnes, who will guide us through advanced reports today in My Geotab. And I also have Jason Widla, who will read any of your questions that you might have. Just a note to start, it is advanced Excel, so hopefully that you have some knowledge there. It will really help you along the way, and it'll get you up and running with the advanced reports a little easier. If you have any questions regarding the topic being discussed, please write them in the questions box down in the bottom right corner of your screen, and we will certainly discuss them if it pertains to the topic. If not, if it needs to be taken offline, please reach out to your reseller or your account manager, and we will certainly get any of those questions taken care of. So this is an overview, and hopefully Ange can take us through some of those more detailed things so that we can understand it better and you can start jumping through hoops and making your own report. Also, a little bit of troubleshooting. If you find your line is crackling or breaking up, sometimes it just works if you hang up and dial back in or click back in. Often it corrects the bad line. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Angie.
Thank you, thank you. Welcome, everyone. So, so as Carrie said, this is advanced reporting. You know, I recommend you have at least an intermediate level, skill level, I guess you could say, in Excel. Just a little background. When I first started with Geotab, I guess I would say I had an intermediate skill level, and there were a couple of things in the reports that I wasn't too sure about. And but working with the data, I work with it almost pretty much every day. I've gotten used to how the reports work, and I think I mentioned this on my last webinar. Google is my best friend. I've learned a lot through just searching through Google, basically putting through, okay, I want to be able to figure out how I can convert, hours, minutes, seconds to a decimal time. And you would be floored if you can see all the results that you can find. There's lots of good resources on the web. If you ever find that you're stuck, most of the time you'll be able to find the results online. So basically what I'm going to be covering today is I'm going to do a quick little kind of show and tell, I guess you can say. I'm going to show you a couple of reports that we have created here. First one being the Watchdog report. Second one I'm going to go over is the idle cost report, which is now up on the repository. And then the third one is our scorecard, which will be on the repository shortly. And then finally what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create kind of a events per 100 miles report, just to show you some of the formulas that I used. I know I've said this is advanced. I'm not going to get too advanced because we could spend a long time on that, but I am going to show you some formulas that I use on a daily basis with a lot of our reports. So I'm just going to show my screen. So to start off with, I mentioned I'm going to go over the Watchdog report. So I actually already have it open here, but what I wanted to show you is the device report. So this can be pulled from just by going into the vehicles list and pulling the standard report from there. And this device report is the Watchdog report. And I kind of wanted to show that. So if we look on the data tab, and I've mentioned before that all of the reports have a data tab that's hidden. I've unhidden them just to start because I wanted to zoom in and make sure everybody can see this. So if I unhide the data tab, I've got a whole bunch of information here. So now you can see this is the data tab here that I've unhidden, and simply just right-click and unhide, and then I can just choose the tab that I want to unhide. So now I'm in here. I've got all of my headers, all of my information. As I mentioned before, do not change any of the headers. This is just for reference. So as I scroll over, I can see that I've got the location. I'm just going to try and go as slow as possible because I know there can be some lag. But I've got the odometer, I've got the engine hours, I've got the last known office zone, which is kind of neat. There's lots of information in this device report. A lot of the times when people use this, they use it just to see the vehicles in their fleet. But you can see, you can get the firmware, you can get the serial number, the license plate, license state, VIN, and the most important stuff for the Watchdog report is over here. It's these columns right here, where you can actually see it says last GPS record and last trip. So this is kind of what we're pulling when we're using the Watchdog report. I am going to show you the Watchdog report in just 1 second, but I just wanted to show you that this is just the standard device report. It has all the same information. It's just a matter of formulas and how you format it. So I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to go over to the Watchdog report. I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller again so you guys can see the full screen. Okay. So if I go onto that data tab that was hidden before, you can see I've got all the same information. There we go here. So we've got the device active from, active to. I've got the firmware, serial numbers. We've got some devices that just aren't active right now, which is why you see zeros. Those are historic vehicles, so we do still include those. And then there's the 2 important pieces of information that I want for this Watchdog report. So I've got my last GPS record and my last trip record. Now, over on the report tab is where it gets interesting. If I show you what our standard device report looks like on the report tab, you can see we've got simple stuff, vehicle, any comments related to that. There's the license plate, the VIN, and odometer and what type of device it is. So pretty standard information. We've made this report to make it just simple and just clean cut. When it comes to the Watchdog report, as you have mostly all seen this before, we get a little bit more detailed here. We've got the vehicle, which we saw before, but we all have the group name, which is simply just a reference, and I'm going to go over that. We've got the last communication date. Now, the last trip and the last download, it is actually how many days since they last had a trip or how many days since they last had a download. And as you can see in the formula bar, I will go over it. You can see there's quite a bit of stuff up there. Serial number. We've got a status, which we've kind of created on our own. And then we actually have something pretty cool that we're able to do is a link where you can actually see on a Google map where the vehicle last communicated. So I'm going to kind of touch on these one by one. As I touched on in the basic training, each cell in the report tab is referencing back to the data tab. So that's why I kind of mentioned that both data tabs on the device report and the Watchdog report are exactly the same. So you can basically just create your own Watchdog report from the standard device report. So you can see here the vehicle is just referencing back on the data tab, which is what we see here, cell A13. And I'm just going to actually kind of just delete that and show you how I did it. It's really straightforward. I always make sure to unhide the data tab before I start working with formulas because it's really simple. I can just type equals, and I can actually just click on the data tab. I don't know if you can see this. It might be a little small. In the formula bar, it's already saying data, and it's got an exclamation point. That means it's a sheet. So it's referencing the data sheet. And I'm just going to scroll over here. I'm going to click on A7. You can see right there. Now it's saying I'm referencing the data sheet, cell A7. And all I have to do from here is just hit the Enter key on my keyboard. Now it's giving me A7. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to backspace there because I don't want to jump the lines here. So that's the simple part of it, okay? And we've done the same thing for the groups. I double click, it looks like it's referencing cell C7. Same for the address. We've got something a little bit more advanced in the address. And this is where it comes into some interesting stuff with an if statement. This is a standard basic if statement. We can definitely get more complicated. But this one here is basically saying if, and I don't know if some people know about the if, else, then. This is basically what it is. If data, whatever is in data sheet cell H7, if that content is blank, so if it equals blank, and that's just 2 exclamation marks, then I just want it, exclamation, I said exclamation, didn't I? Quote, 2 quote marks. Then I just want it to make it blank. I want this cell to be blank. If it's not blank, then I want to know what is inside that cell. So as you can see, right now it's blank, but as I scroll down, I've got some information. So that's a simple if statement there. Do we have any questions so far? I just want to make sure I'm not losing anything here. We're good? Okay. Last communication. So this one's a bit interesting. We actually do have some hidden columns here, and I'm just going to unhide them. You can see we got from column K to N, so there's some things hidden. Simple way is I just highlight the two columns, right-click, and unhide, and it will unhide anything in between there. So this is just giving us that last trip record and last GPS record from the data tab, as you can see, equaling cell AC7 and AD7. If I go back over here, last communication. So what it's doing is it's saying if the maximum between L13 and M13, and that is on this sheet. You can see it doesn't have that sheet reference. When it doesn't have that sheet reference, it means it's the sheet that you're in. So if the maximum between L13, which is the last trip record, and M13 is equal to 0, then just put in unknown. That means we don't know what the last communication was because there's no date. Otherwise, give me what the maximum was between those two, and that will be our last communication. So as you can see here, the last communication on this device is December 10th, 2009, 11:28 in the morning. And if I scroll over here, it's the last GPS record, which is the maximum between these two, because this one is about 7 minutes prior. Now, last trip and last download. Now, we wanted to show the last days. So this one can be a little bit more complicated, and I believe we've got some hidden columns referencing in here as well. Let me just unhide. So we had to kind of break it down a little bit. We've got the last download value and the last download unit, I guess you can say. The reason we did this is that if you were to go in the summary tab, maybe you want to be able to sort by the days. You couldn't do that with the formula that we have here because it's combining text with values. So we separated out in these columns. So you do have the ability to sort and filter by column F. Basically, I say basically, but let me just see if I can kind of go through this here for you. So I'll cover the if error in a second. Basically, all it's saying is if whatever is within the brackets is an error, then give me a certain result. So this one gets a little bit more complicated. We've got some OR statements in here. So it's basically saying if J20 equals not communicating, or it equals delayed communication, or it equals possible communication issue. So you can see that we've combined three things into an OR statement. So we want to know if between all of those, if one of those meets the criteria. Then the result will be, and you can see that it says value if true. Concatenate is actually, you can use concatenate, or you can do it two different ways. You can use this concatenate formula, which basically allows you to combine different things together. Another way you can do it is you don't even have to say concatenate. You can say equals maybe one cell, use the ampersand sign, and then the other cell, and it will do the same job. But what we've done here is we've saying concatenate, and we've got this formula here that's called dated if. What that basically does, and it actually is a really old formula that I like to use, it kind of gives you the days between two times, I guess you can say.
It's a date difference.
It is. It's a date difference. So you don't have to worry about, one date being higher than the other, because Excel can treat times a little bit different than what you would think they would. They actually are a number value. So instead of having to say, okay, well, if this time is higher than this one, then I want to delete from there. You don't have to get complicated. You can just use this simple dated if and just put in your first time and your second time, and then whatever format you want it to be in. So basically, data AC14, from what I recall, is the last trip, because we are in the last trip column. So I want to know the dates between the last trip and data B2, which is the run date, which is today's date. And I want it to be in the format of days. So that's basically where we're at now. So we've started off with, okay, if we meet any of these criteria, then tell me the days, basically. If we don't, then I just want it to be blank. I don't care, because clearly it's had a trip today, possibly. Else, this is where we come into the else, I guess you can say. Oh, actually, no, I believe we're still concatenating. My apologies. Now we're actually looking at the date again, and this is a nested if statement. So this is where it can get a little bit complicated. So yes, we've got an if statement, but we can build an if statement within an if statement, if that makes any sense. So you can see when I click on this if word down here, it tells me that I'm still within my concatenate. So I've actually now on to text 3. So text 2 is the blank, and I apologize, the blank didn't mean that the result was blank. It's actually saying concatenate the number of days. The comma acts as the and in this situation. And give me a space, and then I want to concatenate if the days are greater than 1, then tell me days, and that's the text I want to put in there. If it's not greater than 1, then I just want it to be day, because maybe it's just 1 day. I don't want to say 1 day. And then finally here, so now we can see down in this little bubble down here, value if it's false. So if it doesn't meet any of these criteria, then I just want it to be blank. And now, you know how I mentioned it said if error? So what I've done is basically if anything within here is an error, then what we deem is that it's never transmitted. So then we've got in this text never transmitted. And just for your knowledge, this is kind of basic, but just want to point it out there. If you're talking about text, you have to wrap it in quotes, just to put that out there. So that's trying to be as basic as possible with my explanation there, but that's how we came to this result of 56 days. Do we have any questions out there? And I didn't confuse anybody.
No, that's okay. Could everybody see the entire line on the formula after the 1 day or days, and then eventually it says never transmitted? As long as you can see the whole thing, though, good.
So that's how we got to the last trip. Same thing for last downloaded days as well. We're just using the, this one's a little bit different. This one here, let me just see if I can scroll over. So this one here is a little bit different. So now we're using an and. So instead of us wanting one of the possible logics, I want to know if all of them, basically. So if, okay, so if it's not equal to, which is basically what these two symbols mean, it's greater than or less than, basically not equal to. So if J20 is not equal to OK and it's not equal to not active, then I want to start doing my calculations and formulas. So that's kind of what we've done here. Then I want to do my concatenate. So I'm concatenating F20, which is the last download values, and G20, which is the last download days. And in F20 and G20 is those formulas that I kind of went over in that last section there. So we've put them in those columns for the reason I mentioned. Now, because we've put them in there, it's just an easy reference. We don't have to make a super complicated formula. So we're saying if the concatenation between the two of those is blank, then it's never transmitted. Okay, so that's our value if true. Our value if false, we're concatenating the two together. And then this is the final value if false. Because we've nested the if statement inside of an if statement, this was our true. This whole section here was our true for the and. So if those meet criteria, then this is what we want to do in the highlight. If not, blank. And then that's where we can see we're getting our data. Because these two say not active, it's blank because it meets one of these criteria. Or doesn't meet, I should say, because it's not equal to. Last but not least, this one actually is pretty cool. We've been able to do this on, we can do this on pretty much any report where we can get latitude and longitude. It's pretty nice to be able to see, and we recommend, especially with this report, I wanted to put it in because when you've got a device that's not communicating or maybe possibly delayed or something along those lines, first thing I would like to go to is I open it in browser and see where they last communicated. Could be an auto shop, could be a residence. You know, I'm not going to point fingers, but sometimes, you know, a lot of times we see that it's been unplugged, and it's not somebody tampering. Most of the time, it could be a mechanic forgot to plug it back in. So I'm not putting blame on anything, but just to kind of give you an idea. So if I look at this one here, if I just click on it, it brings me to Google, and it says this is where it last communicated. Do we have any questions?
This is a valid question. I think you can, I'll let you answer it here. Why do you need to concatenate twice within the if statement again?
Here?
You're going to concatenate if this, else this. You still have to concatenate it in both places. One of the two is going to be correct.
Yeah, so I'm assuming they're talking about this one here. So basically what I'm doing, let me just go back here. I mean, we could simply just do, you know, if F20 equals blank, we would probably get the same result.
Empty versus blank is quite possibly. We use a concatenate there to ensure that there's nothing in it.
Yeah, because we're doing references, empty and blank could be a little bit different. I myself didn't make this formula, so I'm not sure the reasoning behind it. I'm sure they did some testing and found that by simply just doing if F20 is blank, that they maybe got some inaccurate results, and that's why they did the concatenate. So they're saying if the concatenation of these two is equal to blank, then this, else give me that concatenation. I hope that answers the question. We have to.
Yep, I think so.
Okay. If not, please let us know in the question bar, and we'll definitely answer it for you. Okay. The final thing I want to touch on in the Watchdog report is this section here. Let me see if I can get some okay. Anyway, so if I just double click on here, I'm going to show you. Now this is another funny one. I'm going to unhide some rows. We have hidden some rows between 2 and 7 here. I'm just going to unhide, and I'll show you why. So this is basically, sorry about that, everyone. Okay, so these rows that we've hidden are actually things that you can adjust based on your needs. As you can see, when I was kind of going through this, we saw some new statuses. So we've got delayed communication, possible communication issue. We are actually changing the wording of those, just so you know, to make them a little bit more clear. But what we were running into with the previous Watchdog report was, you know, as you have all probably seen on Monday mornings, you've got a whole bunch more devices that are not communicating than there were on Friday. And that's because maybe there were vehicles that were parked underground or parked in a concrete building and they weren't communicating all over the weekend, but they are still okay. It's not an issue with the vehicle or the device. So we've kind of taken that into consideration now, where we've kind of added separate statuses. So possible communication or delayed communication would kind of cover that weekend scenario. Possible communication issue could be for, you know, if somebody's on vacation for a week and they're parked in that, you know, underground. And then the not communicating threshold, you know, there's a major issue going on here. So these values can actually be changed to 3, 7, and 21. And I could, you know, maybe I can say 7 here, and maybe 10 here, and 21, and things could change. Now I think maybe I can do this to 10. I don't know how long these have been offline for, so the numbers may not change, but you can change those to whatever you like, basically. You know, for weekends, maybe I would choose 4 days just to make sure, you know, we've got the Fridays, maybe they have the Friday off or something. so you can kind of get the accurate readings of your fleet. So the reason I wanted to show you this is over here in the status, you can see we're actually referencing those cells right here. And I'll explain the dollar signs in a second. So what we're doing here is saying if, and we've got another or, so if, and let's go back to B, if the last communication says unknown, or B2, data B2, which is today's date, is greater than data Q7, which I believe, I have to go back and see what it is. Let me just double check. Sorry, guys. I want to make sure I'm giving you the right information. So that's the device active from date, which is kind of interesting. So if today's date is less than that, then I think I might be cutting myself off here. There we go. No, sorry, not then. We're on an or. So if D13 is equal to unknown, or today's date is less than the active from, or it's greater than the active to, then my result will be it's not active. Then we're throwing in for the false. If it's false, we're throwing in another if statement. Okay, so if it's false, well, maybe we want to see if we can do something else here. If today's date minus last communication is greater than B6. Now, if I go over to B6, B6 is the not communicating threshold. This is where we're kind of taking this into play. If today's date minus last communication is greater than the not communicating threshold, then it's not communicating. Okay? Then we go from there. Okay? We're nesting within nesting. Okay? So this is why we're on an advanced Excel here. So I apologize if some of you may get lost in a second. But if we follow, and I do this all the time when I'm making nested if statements, sometimes I kind of lose myself. But if you follow this little pop-down window here, you'll know what part of the formula you're in to kind of bring you back. Okay, I'm in the false. So maybe, do I need to move?
Can you maybe pull pull J over to the left a little?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Perfect. Yep.
Cut off a little bit on the right.
Sometimes that happens, but eventually we can see that. It's more important that what you were referencing there at the bottom in your little square, it shows now what you're talking about.
Perfect. Okay, good.
Okay.
All right. Okay. It might still be cut off a little bit, but that's Excel being funny. All right. So as I was saying, I don't know if you can see where my mouse is, but I'm hovering over down on the bottom. There's little pop-ups. I know that I'm in the false section of my formula, so I'm like, okay, I can bring myself back. So basically what I'm now saying is if whatever happened here, you know, the today's date minus last communication greater than B6, if it's false, then I want to know, okay, if today's date minus last communication is greater than B5, which is our possible communication issue threshold, then I want to show possible communication. And then we kind of just keep building on top of that to get all of the statuses. So then we do the delayed communication. Then we come down to here, which we're looking at our false for the overall if statement. If all of those are false, then it's okay, is the end result. And that's how we get our statuses. So I've spent a little bit more time than I thought I was going to on the Watchdog report, but I wanted to show you kind of how we've done it and how you can manipulate the data to give you what you want. Like, this was just a basic device report, and we've thrown in rows, we've thrown in dates, we've thrown in thresholds, we've got all these if statements to grab and give us the results that we want to see. This is kind of a reason why I recommend to have an advanced Excel person within your company. This actually isn't as advanced as some of the reports can get. Some of them can get a little bit crazy, I'm not going to lie. But you can see all the cool stuff that you can do with the data. I'm going to quickly go over the idle cost report. This one isn't as advanced, but it's a pretty fun one to show you how we've done it. Okay, everybody can see there. This is actually based on our trip summary report. If I go on the data tab, I've actually slimmed it down a bit. So on our basic webinar that I did a few weeks ago, I showed how you can actually delete some columns in the data tab. That is allowed. Deleting the headers is not. Just kind of reiterating that. You can delete columns to shrink the size of your report down to really only give you the information that you really need. Our standard trip summary report actually gives you a lot more information than this. It'll give you not only idling duration, but all the durations for the different zones, standard zone types, the percentages of how much time they spent in those, drive time, all that good stuff. I slimmed it down to just give me the idle duration because this is simply just an idle report.
Could you switch over to your tabs so that we can see them at the bottom?
My apologies, I didn't make it.
It's okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks.
So this was the data tab, yes. You can see that now. Perfect. All right, so these ones are pretty simple. I'm just referencing, the data tab again for the name, the group, the date. The weekday actually gets pretty interesting. There's a couple of ways you can do this, but this is the way I've chosen on this one. Basically, what I've done to get the weekday is we've used the text formula. So I've said text, I want to know for cell C11, give me the results in day format, the weekday format, which is DDDD. And there's all sorts of help documents to show you all the different formats, but let me just show you, if I change DDDD to DDD and hit enter, it's giving me the short form now for that weekday. If I were to change it to MMMM, this actually gives me the full month of whatever is in that cell. You can even shorten it down as well. So if I do DD, it gives me 16. If I do D, if it was maybe the first day of the month, it would give me 1, just the number 1. If I did DD, it would give me 0, 1. Kind of hope that makes sense. I'm going to change this back to my 4Ds, which gives me the full weekday, and there is a reason I did this, and I'll go over that in a second. And then idling duration is simply just referencing back again to the data tab. Now the idling cost is where it gets fun. As you can see on the top, we've got a section here that's added in. And this can be edited, and we've highlighted what can be edited, which is the price per gallon, because obviously that's going to change a lot. And we've got one for liters as well for us Canadian folks. I made one for liters because I am in Canada and I want to see it in liters. But this is just showing you the one in gallons for now. So we know kind of throughout the industry, just in driving in general, that you burn about 1 gallon per hour of idling. So we've kind of put that into the calculation. So 1 gallon per hour, which ends up being 0.016667 gallons per minute, and then so forth per second. And we use these in our calculation. So if I double click on the idling cost, you can see it's actually not as complicated as some of those other formulas were. It's actually kind of simple. Basically, I'm taking the idle duration, multiplying it by the gallons per second, because we're looking at time, multiplied by the seconds per day, which is 86,400, and then multiplying that by the price per gallon, which gives us our overall idling cost. Let me just scroll down. There we go. So we know here that about 33 minutes, and this is hours, minutes, seconds, just so you know, 33 minutes of idling has given us, it's about $2.10 that is being spent on that idle. If I were to change this to my 1 hour, I've got my full $3.75, which is the price per gallon. That's a good way to check your formula to make sure it's working okay. And the reason I showed you, I've got my weekdays, the reason I did that is because I wanted this to be a trend report. As you know, we do have the ability to kind of create reports with sub-periods. So this is actually a weekly report trending daily. So if I keep scrolling down here, I'm going to take that freeze panes off again. If I scroll down here, I can see my days change: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And for each day, I've got the same vehicle. So I can trend day over day to see how the fleet is doing overall with idle. Or I can even maybe choose one vehicle and want to see how we did overall as well. There's a couple of neat things you can do here. What I've chosen to do for this report is simply just trend it day over day. I'm going to make this chart a little bit smaller so everybody can, actually, let me bring it over. So when it came to the pivot table, I'm just going to show the field list. I simply just chose weekday and idling costs. So that's all I really care about in the report itself or in the dashboard itself. So instead of choosing the date, if I were to take weekday out and choose date, I've got my actual date, 16th, 17th, 18th. To me, I don't remember what day of the week the 19th was. I mean, I do, but most people won't remember that. So that's why I chose to show it in the weekday format, because everyone knows Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whether or not it was the 19th or the 20th or the 22nd. I'm going to click undo. What I've done here also, and you can see it's actually just giving me Monday to Friday, even though we saw a Sunday in that list on the report tab. I've actually filtered those days out because when I was creating this report, most of the fleets don't work on the weekends, but there obviously are some that do. So you can always add those back in. I simply just clicked on the drop down beside weekday, and I took Sunday and Monday out of there, and that's all I did. If I added them in, you can see how it kind of makes the report look a little bit different. Sunday, there was no driving probably, so there's no idling. Same with Saturdays, maybe only one guy drove. So it kind of skews your data a little bit if you throw that in. Because I've got a trend line on here, I'm seeing how the week is going, how it's progressing with the idle costs. If I add those in, it kind of throws it off a little bit. Not so much, not so drastically in this report, but it could in lots of other ones. If I take those back out, it looks pretty good. Now I know we don't have too much time left, so what I was going to show you our scorecard, and then I was going to kind of create a quick one just to show you how I can do. I don't know if I need to create it because I think I've gone over a few things, but.
Okay, so we did create, remember we did create in our standard reports, we created the templates, we imported the templates and all of that stuff, so we don't need to go through that again. So if we want to go through our time for the next 20 minutes to everything that we possibly can. We had one comment on importing templates. Something just to make you aware of so you remember that, the all data range.
Yes.
Definitely needs to be there. Always check it. If it doesn't, we will not guarantee that it will come in properly. It does not expand with it, okay? But otherwise, we won't bring templates in here because that's just time that we could spend elsewhere. So
yeah, and the easiest way to check for the all data, and I'll just cover on this lightly, is just to click up here and click on all data and make sure it is covering everything that you want to be in that pivot table. I run into, and I did this when I first started, if I want to add something in here, drive time, let's just say. I don't know. I probably don't have it in this report. Let's just put 162. If I add that in here and I go to the summary tab and refresh the pivot table, I'll notice that it's not existing in that list of things to choose from. It's because it's outside of that all data range. So I always recommend to insert a column within the data, and that way it will always be within that all data range. And you can see if I verify this now, you can see it's outside of that all data range. You can fix this, and this is a little bit of an advanced feature, so I have no problem going over it. If you go to Formulas and go to Name Manager, you can fix it just by clicking in here. You can maybe say, okay, I want it to go to G, and that may be a little small for you guys. I apologize. Or you can simply just, click and drag and choose your data set. It's asking me if I want to save the changes that I made to the reference. Yes. Normally I would click on the checkbox. I usually just close it. So now if I click on all data, that drive time is now included in there. So that's a very, very good thing to check for. Absolutely. This one actually, is actually pretty good, because what I was going to cover when I was going to make a report was actually show you events per 100 miles. So that's actually included in this report, so it's perfect. So this report is our scorecard that I've made. And this actually is from our risk management report. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen our risk management report. It includes a whole bunch of data. But the great part about it is it allows you to report on exception rules that are being broken. And I like to use this better than the exceptions report for a couple of reasons. Obviously, the exceptions detailed report gives you a lot of information as far as the location. That's fantastic. The exceptions summary report, it gives you, the overall count, duration, and distance of any rule that was broken. But what it doesn't include, and that I like to measure my data off of, is drive time and total distance for the period. And that's why I like to use the risk management report. I'm going to unhide some columns. You can see we've got column K all the way to Z. So I've got quite a bit of stuff hidden in here. And I like to hide it because I don't want to scare the standard user with all the stuff that we've done. But basically all this is it's referencing the data tab again, all the different rules. And I've put generic headers in here so that anybody can go in and just change it to whatever rule they want. But this is basically referencing the incident count column for each rule. And if I just unhide the data tab, I'm going to scroll over because there's actually quite a bit before we get to the rules section. Here we go. So this is rule number 2. You can see here that rule number 2, the name of it is harsh braking. And for each one, we've got a duration, a count, and a distance. And we've got that for rule number 2, rule number 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So I'm only concerned about the count in this report. And then I've just done a simple sum, equal sum, and then just summing all of these occurrences to get me the total occurrences or total events. I've got a column here for the total distance, which is in the data tab. I'm just referencing it. This is where it gets a little bit fun and interesting. So I just double click on here. So, and I've chosen that if error again, because if it's an error, I just want it to be 0 because I was noticing that I was getting some issues. But if I actually, I'll show you what it will look like if I do get an error. But for now, so if error, and then in here, so I'm looking at T12, which is my rule 1 count. So T12 times 100 divided by R12. And what that is actually giving me is the events per 100 miles. Because, and I've talked about this before, you can't really say that somebody who broke the rule, I don't know, 100 times is worse than the guy who broke it 10 times. Just by looking at the incident counts, it doesn't really mean anything, because the guy who broke it 100 times could probably have driven 3,000 miles, yet the guy who broke it 10 times could have only driven 2 miles. When you factor in the distance, you now get a better understanding of the behavior of the driver of the vehicle. Now, all of a sudden, the guy who's actually broken it 10 times is way worse than the guy who broke it 100 times. So that's why we kind of do that. Now, in saying that, I know that events per 100 miles, when you look at it, it means nothing. 0.5, 2.5, 2. I don't know what that means. So we tried to kind of put it in a score, and we've used the scale to kind of reference that. And I'm going to unhide that tab here, scoring criteria. So basically what we've done is we've given everything, it's a score out of 100. And it increments in 0.05 events per 100 miles. So we started off with out of 100. We found that a lot of people just wanted to see a score out of 5, so we basically just divided it by 20, simple math. But as you can see, so I've got, this one here says 0.5. So if I go into the scoring criteria, he's got a score of 99, because that's not a high number. That's not a lot of events per 100 miles. Now this one over here, 21.4, that's pretty high. So if I scroll down into my list here, it's probably right off the chart, because we're only incrementing in 0.05, this guy probably has a score of 0. As you can see, the maximum is 8. So if I were to look at rule 5, yeah, it's got a score of 0. So that's kind of how we've done it. And we did it simply with just doing a VLOOKUP. And I don't know if some of you are familiar with a VLOOKUP. It's a pretty popular formula. It basically allows you to look up a value within a table, I guess you can say. So what I've done in this formula here is I want to look up whatever is in P12, which is the 21.4. I want to find it in the scoring criteria tab, which you can see right here, within cells A2 to B102. I'm actually just going to kind of recreate this for you to show you how it works. So I'm going to say equals VLOOKUP, and you can see the great thing about Excel is when you type and you start to type the formula name, it kind of tells you what the formula does. So you know that you're building the right formula. Always do an open bracket. Now it's saying, okay, lookup value. Okay, I want to look up 21.4. And I hit the comma to go on to the next part of the formula, table array. So that's just saying, where do you want to look this up? I want to look it up in the scoring criteria. So I click on scoring criteria tab. You can see in the formula bar it's now added that name. I'm going to go up to the top here. And I want to look it up in all of this. Now I could highlight everything, or I can just highlight what I've got and do Shift Control and hit the down button, and it takes me to the bottom of the data. It won't take me any further. So I want to look within this section of data. Now the thing to be careful for, and I've made this mistake before, is if I leave it the way it is right now, as the formula increments and rows down, it's going to change this from A2 to B102 to A3 to B103, A4. So I end up actually missing data, if that makes any sense. We want to make this absolute, so it stays, this is the only data I want to look at. There's a shortcut on your keyboard. You can actually hit the F4 button, and it will actually do it for you. And that's the dollar signs that we kind of saw before. So putting the dollar sign in front of A and in front of 2 means it's going to stay at A2, and then it's going to stay to B102, and that's it. It's not going to move outside of those values. So that's where I'm referencing. Now, the lookup value is the 21.4. It has to be in the beginning. How do you explain this? I'm looking it up basically in column A, I guess you can say, and I want whatever relates to it in the second column. So that's where I'm going to say column index number is 2. So it's the second column. So I want to know, is 21.4 in the first column, and what is the value related to that in the second column? Does that make better sense? Okay, I think the first way I explained it might have been difficult. And then basically give me whatever that result is, whatever it is that's connected to that. Now, where it says range lookup, you always want it to be false when you're working with data. I don't know in any instance with our data why you would ever want it to be true. True is an approximate match. I don't need approximates, I need exact. So I'm going to say false. I need it to be an exact match. And then I'm going to close my bracket, and that's my VLOOKUP. I hit enter. You can see there I've got an NA, which is pretty interesting. I did my divide by 20. Oh. NA, so basically it's saying NA because it's not available. It's not in that table. So this is where you would kind of put the if error. So if error, oops, I put a bracket in between there, error, VLOOKUP, and I want to go right to the end, and I'm going to do comma. You can see here in my little bubble, what's the value going to be if it's an error? 0. Enter. There you go. I think I might have done something funny there. I don't know why it gave me an error in the first place. Kind of happens when I'm doing things like this, but basically that's what it will do. Is if it's an error of any kind, NA, reference, anything like that, then just give me the result of 0. So that's kind of how we came up with these individual scores. So we're looking at the events per 100 miles, and we're just referencing back into that scoring criteria and matching the score based on those events per 100 miles. Where it gets interesting is the total score. As you see at the top, we've got some weighting. So rule 1 to 6 have different weights to them. So rule 1 could be speeding, 2 could be harsh acceleration, then braking, cornering, and so forth, seatbelts. Maybe speeding means more to your company than harsh acceleration or braking. So you'd make the weighting percentage higher, which would affect the overall score. So let me just go down here. If I were to change rule 1 to 40%, it adjusts the total scores. I don't know if you saw that. I can actually just go there. So we had 4.1, 3.8, and 3.3. I've typed in that 40. It changed it, 4.6, 4.3, 3.6. But something else that I've put in there is a check for the weighting. It must equal 100% for it to be accurate. So I now, because I've upped the percentage on rule 1, I should probably take something down 10% and another one. So maybe in rule 2 I'll make 10%. There we go. So our overall score is looking about the same. But if I were to change, maybe up the weighting in something else, then it would adjust for that. So it's a pretty neat way of getting that overall score for each individual. And they're all in their own kind of categories. What we've done there is, here's our category. So 0 to 1 for the points is a high risk. That means they've gone off the charts, basically, the scoring criteria. 1 to 2 is a medium high risk. 2 to 3 is a medium risk. 3 to 4 is a low risk, and 4 to 5 is no risk. They've maybe had one incident or something. And then we've kind of made this nice little donut chart, which I like. I just like saying donut chart. And then you can see, on the dashboard, your overall fleet, how everybody's doing. 75% is low risk, 25% is no risk. No problem. My fleet's doing awesome. Obviously, we don't want to see any reds and oranges in there. And then what I've done is I've got an overall average fleet score, and that's just basically, it's just a simple average formula. Equals average of the report tab, column D, which is the total score. That's it. So I know we're pretty much cutting it to the end, so I apologize for that. I'm sure there's some questions.
Lots of questions that I think are pretty pointed. I think one of the things that you have to realize here, what Angie's shown you, is just not only just a touch of what we can do, but it should really give you an idea that your opportunities are quite open at this point, and you can do just about anything with it. We give you the data, we give you some basics to start with, and you can pretty much pull anything out of it. Those data tabs have everything. So it's important to get to the right report, as was mentioned in the standard reports. It's important to get to the right report, and then from there you can pull all the data and manipulate it in any which way you want. Your help is your best friend. Your Google is your best friend. Microsoft does have a forum where you can go to.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. A really great site is called Osgrid. Just go to osgrid.com or Google Osgrid. Fantastic. And you'll probably see it if you actually do Google certain things you want to do, that will be one of your top results. Another one, it's kind of funny, it's called Mr. Excel. And they're all forums.
Yes, I've used that one as well.
It's people asking questions and Excel experts answering them and actually giving them the formula they should use. I do actually have one question here that I wanted to touch on before we ended it. Somebody asked that if you have multiple charts, how can you display all of them on the dashboard? You cannot. The dashboard only grabs one. There's no way to do multiples. Kind of.
Yeah, the only answer I could come up with that would be that you have to have a multiple of reports.
Yes.
And
so you would almost have to, do one report with the one graph, and then import it again with the second graph only, import it again with the third graph only, and then you'll have your 3 different dashboards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to do that. So thanks, Ange. I think at this point you can see everything that you can do with it and more, and your opportunities are open. If you have that second level or that intermediate level of Excel, you can grow with it. Let Google be your best friend, and we do have a knowledge base as well.
We also have a forum for custom reports as well that you can put some questions into there.
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And no, that's okay. And we have the report repository, which is growing daily. And I think you get the idea that you can really grow from this, and hopefully this has given you the opportunity to try and play with it a little bit and use some of our standard reports and manipulate them the way you need them.
And don't be afraid of the formulas. I know, when I went over them, some of them can look pretty complicated, but if you go over them each section, you'll actually see that there's a really good logic to them and they make perfect sense. It's just a matter of knowing, what formula to use, and that's when Google comes into play and just experience using it day in, day out. There is a fine line between Excel training and report training, so I wanted to kind of, touch on how it works in our data. I'm sure we could do some other sessions going forward,
Absolutely, which brings me to the next thing, and that is if you have other opportunities that you want to know more about, and we see that lots of people need the same thing, we'll certainly add that to the training webinars and get everybody else up and running on it. If you've got the problem, maybe somebody else does too. So I want to open that up to you. If you have anything that you want to know more about, let us know. And I'll mark it on my list, and we'll see if we can cover it at some point in the future. Okay, so with that, it is 2:31. I don't want to keep anybody longer. You know where to find us if you need us. And with that, we're going to sign off, and thanks so much for coming. And we look forward to seeing you again or hearing you again. And we do have our training running almost every week, either once a week or twice a week. So just keep up on that with the calendar, and you'll see what's coming up for the next month or two. Okay? Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.